करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः तारकस्योपदेशेन गुरुर्भूत्वा विमुक्तिदः काश्यामपीश्वरस्तस्मात् ईश्वराधिको गुरुः. Yeah, so Tarakasya Upadeshena, through the teaching of how to cross samsara, Vimuktidaha, Ishvaraha Vimuktidaha. So the Ishvara becomes the releaser from samsara. Where even in Kashi, you know how Gurur Bhutva, even in Kashi if you go, Lord is going to take on the form of the Guru, or Lord is going to send you a Guru. Okay? That's how the Lord teaches. And so, therefore, the Guru, here the Guru Tattva, the Guru principle is greater than that of Ishvara. And I told you why. Because when you ask Ishvara to give you a big house, lots of money, lots of this, lots of fame, name, he can only give as much as your karma will allow. Because that law of karma is Bhagavan also. But if you go to the Guru and say, I want absolutely everything, Guru says, no problem, because the absolutely everything, he happens to already be you. Therefore, the Guru is greater than Ishvara. Because the Ishvara blesses by giving finite things, and Guru blesses by revealing you as the infinite. You know, very nice verse, wonderful. So then the next one is more of a interchange, it's nice. And then the next one is it can raise a doubt. So if I want a Guru, I have to have the Lord's grace, correct? Yeah, Bhagavan's grace is needed for what? For having Guru. And then Guru's grace is needed for knowing Bhagavan as myself. So what to do now? This is Anyonya Ashraya, means it's a mutual and a kind of a cyclic interdependence. Yeah. You know, you depend on the Guru to see the Lord as yourself, and you depend on the Lord to get the Guru. Interesting, you know. So he is commenting on that. Guror anugrahadishaha Ishvaranugrahad Guruhu Shri Guror Darshanam Hetuhu Param Tvishvara Darshane. Yeah, so Guror Anugrahat, because of the Anugraha, the blessings of the Guru, Ishaha is revealed as you. The Isha, the all-powerful Lord, is revealed as the truth of yourself because of the Guru's blessing. And what is the blessing here? In the form of the teaching being the blessing. And then what? Here it is the other way also. Ishvara anugrahad guruhu. How do you get Guru? You know, by the grace of Lord Ishvara. So the grace of the Lord gives you the Guru, the grace of the Guru gives you the Lord as yourself. And then what? Then he says, Shri Guru ho darshanam hetuhu. The hetu, you know, the hetu means the cause that is instrumental in seeing the Guru. There's not a big deal in seeing the Guru. Here it means seeing the Guru as the truth of yourself. So the grace involved in seeing the Guru as yourself, the cause, not the grace here, the cause involved, param, you know, tu Ishvara darshane, in seeing the Lord as the ultimate, you see the Guru as the truth of yourself. So the best vision is, you don't want to set up a competition between Ishvara or the Lord. The best is to see both of them in the Guru. That is the idea. Not much to comment on, but it's kind of concluding some of the things that we have so far seen. Very nice. So the best is, this is a very popular refrain of the Bhakti movement saints also, and some of the stories, in Maharashtra there is that in Pandharipur there is Lord Vithala. Vithala means brick. He is standing on a brick. Now if you ask why is he standing on a brick, it is because of the devotee he is standing on the brick. The devotee was tending to his elderly parents. And the Lord said, "Here I am, you have been praying." And he threw a brick and said, "Wait till I finish tending to them, then I will look at you." And the Lord complied and stood on a brick. Till this day, he is standing on the brick in the temple. Because the parents are nothing but the Lord, and the Bhakta knew that. And then there is another, doha, a duet, couplet, composed by Saint Kabir. And what does he say? He says that the doorbell rings. Oh, in those days they had doorbell? All right, knocker. Don't try to, split the hairs. The doorbell rings. You open the door and you are suddenly surprised by Guru and Bhagavan standing side by side. Then you are so confused and nervous, you don't know who to bow down to first. Well, the Lord is greater than Guru because, the Lord is greater than everything. So you have to bow down to the Lord if you feel. Saint Kabir says no. Bow down to the Guru who made you aware of the Lord, who taught you about the Lord as yourself. So like this, that is the same kind of a little spin on this. The best thing is to see the Ishvara and in the Guru itself. That is all that is there. Next one. This one is very interesting. Again, a comparison between the Lord and Guru. Ishvara sarva hetutvat.
Ishvara sarva hetutvat.
Hetus samsara mokshayoho.
Hetus samsara mokshayoho.
Mokshasyaiva gurus tasmat.
Mokshasyaiva gurus tasmat.
Nasti tattvam guroh param.
Nasti tattvam guroh param.
Ishvara sarva hetutvat.
Ishvara sarva hetutvat.
Hetus samsara mokshayoho.
Hetus samsara mokshayoho.
Mokshasyaiva gurus tasmat.
Mokshasyaiva gurus tasmat.
Nasti tattvam guroh param.
Nasti tattvam guroh param.
Another comparison between Guru and Ishvara. So Ishvara is the cause of everything, agreed or not? Yes. Ishvara is the cause of the whole universe, and the whole universe includes everything. So of course the Lord is the cause of everything. Okay. Then what does everything include? Does everything include samsara? Yes. Does everything include moksha? Yes. So the Lord is the cause of bondage, and also the Lord is the cause of the subsequent freedom. Correct? It's like putting the baby in a cradle and rocking it while pinching it also. This is what the Lord does. The baby is confused. Should I cry or laugh? Because the rocking sensation is kind of comforting, but the pinching sensation is not. This is what the Lord is. The Lord is the cause of samsara, and in the samsara He gives you a little rocker. You rock back and forth. But then as you are rocking back and forth, the rocker goes on your foot. That is what it is. And then that's why everyone goes off their rocker in samsara. So Ishvara pinches makes you cry and then gives you hanky, here, let's wipe the tears. So this is hanky Bhagavan, full of hanky panky. And so therefore, this, so what does the Guru do? The Guru only gives moksha, no samsara. So therefore, who is greater? You tell me. That's what it says. Yeah. Ishvara is the cause of bondage and freedom. Yeah. That is what the first line says. Ishvara is the cause of everything. Sarva hetutvat, bandha mokshayoho api hetuhu Ishvaraha. The cause of bondage. Did Ishvara create the bondage? No, don't split hairs now. Is there samsara or not? Yes. And who asked Ishvara to make this crazy world full of weirdos? Yeah. No, that is for the exhaustion of your karma. Don't keep bringing my karma inside, inside this whole thing. You are just basically giving a cop-out, a free, free pass to Ishvara. And you have to hold this fellow culpable. Because look at this rotten life. Look at all the problems. Starting with the physical problems and mental problems. Let us not go there. Very embarrassing. And then, starting with all the other things. Everything that I strive for. Whenever I want success, I am greeted with failure. And then finally I say, success, are you coming? And success comes and then I'm afraid of success. Then also again I go to failure only. And then what? Everybody I meet and greet has some problems. I have several problems. And this whole world, then I found out one Swami and I went to the Swami and said, why this world is like that? Because Bhagavan made it to create a place for the exhaustion of your karma. Swami said, did I ask Bhagavan, please make me a place to exhaust my karma? No, I don't remember asking. Did I say to Bhagavan, please incarnate me? No, forget reincarnate. Even this incarnation, did I say I want to have this kind of a body that doesn't function at all? Did I say that? No. So in other words, Bhagavan is the cause of this lousy life. This is what anyone can say. And they will be correct also to a certain extent. Bhagavan has put me in this world, And then what? And here I am floundering. That's why Bhagavan doesn't need cable TV. Yeah. Dish network. Why? Because he has already dished out my karma that he can watch. He can watch. Every jiva's life is a reality channel. He can just switch channels. He can just focus on each person and their tantrums and how they are negotiating the world. And that's enough. That's very entertaining. Entertaining for Bhagavan maybe, but what about the one going through this? Not fair. So Bhagavan is the cause of samsara. How? Because your own karma phala is gift wrapped and given to you. But the jiva doesn't see this. The individual doesn't see this. Because how do you know I have karma? Why I should believe you that you are saying? Now this is the conversation with the aforementioned Swami. You say my karma is being given to me. How do you know? Did you go and find out how much karma I have? And then to tell me that my karma is being gift wrapped and recycled and being given to me. This is just belief based. Alright, Swami says, don't believe. Then if I don't believe, then I'm still stuck in this, that means. Okay, believe. It's not so easy to believe. Okay, don't believe. No, I don't know how to do this. This is called circular reasoning. Yeah. So therefore, it's my karma. I have to see through my own emotional maturity. And if I don't have the emotional maturity, I will blame Bhagavan. And that is also okay in our world. Because that blame can be transformed into a prayer. So there is no blame game in the Hindu tradition. It's transformed into a prayer. That's why in the Sri Rudram you say to Bhagavan, Drape. Drape means you just, I don't know who you are. You just miserable fellow giving me all this misery. Put away those arrows. Those slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that you are about to shoot at me. Put them away now. I tell him in the first chapter. Because it becomes a prayer. Because even though I don't have the emotional maturity yet to see the truth of this, I vent it out. I went the immaturity out to be in tandem with the vision of the Lord. So it's very slippery. Lord is very slippery. Did you do this? Yes. Why did you do this? I didn't do this. Very slippery. Did you give me this disease? Yes. Why did you give me this disease? That's your karma did that. Yeah, this is how the whole thing is. So this emotional maturity, when it comes, you see that the Lord is not the cause of samsara. Correct? Who is the cause of samsara? No one. My own ignorance is the cause of samsara. You can't say Jiva is the cause of samsara. You can't say Ishvara is the cause of samsara because Jiva is Ishvara. So what do you have to say? My own ignorance is the cause of samsara. The ignorance and the subsequent distortion of the objective world through my own subjective glasses is the cause of samsara. So then, but then Ishvara is the one who distorted my vision because I didn't, the mental makeup is also a karma phala, correct? So then I can say, you are the one who has caused this miserable state of affairs. I can say it from my ignorance. I can also say it from a place of knowledge, not knowledge of the self, but a certain maturity. I can say, yes, you have given back this karma to me, so in that sense you are the cause of this. So therefore I have to pray to you for freedom. So first you create the bondage. What kind of a God are you? First you create the bondage, you watch me flounder, and then when I am breathless, you send some oxygen, and then say, okay, now you are liberated. Look at my Guru by contrast. She will save me from this. Save within extra quotation marks. Save me or free me from this bondage without creating samsara. That is the whole idea. Ishvara is the cause of bondage and freedom. Guru alone is the cause of what? Freedom alone. Guru is the cause of freedom alone. So therefore, salutations to the Guru. Salutes to the Guru. Why? Because you don't create the bondage. Ishvara delivers you into samsara and delivers you out of samsara. Guru only delivers you out of samsara, does not put you in samsara. That's the idea. Very nice. So, Ishvaraha sarva hetutvat. Hetutvat, the cause of everything. Because Ishvara is the cause of everything, Hetuhu is also the cause of samsara and moksha. Samsara mokshayoho api Hetuhu. Mokshasya eva. Mokshasya eva. Only the cause of moksha alone. Guruhu is my teacher. Guruhu tasmat nasti tattvam gurov param. So there is nothing higher than the principle of the Guru. Guru principle. Principle here means that which makes the Guru Guru. That teaching. So there is nothing higher than this teaching because it only liberates, whereas the one that gave you birth, the one that put you in this earth, both binds and liberates. And then this one again a little bit about Kashi. Next one, very nice. Vinapi kshetra mahatmyam.
Vinapi kshetra mahatmyam.
Guru mahatmyatah kila.
Guru mahatmyatah kila.
Vimuktir yatra kutrapi.
Vimuktir yatra kutrapi.
Nakashyam guruna vina.
Nakashyam guruna vina.
Yeah. So, vina api, vina means without. Vina api, even without, kshetra mahatmyam. Kshetra mahatmyam means like these, all these, what is that called? Glories of pilgrimage places. Even in Christianity, they have certain, the Catholics, they have certain holy places. They go on a pilgrimage. In Spain, there is one walk. They do one what is that?
San Juan de Campos.
Starts with a C. Camino or something.
Camino de
Yeah. Yeah, that one. So, that Camino walk, this is supposed to be very holy, and going there transforms certain things. And then you go to in France there is one church which has some water, and you drink that water and it's like a tirtha that makes you feel better. Lourdes. Yeah, so then you go there and you drink the water, and then it is credited with removing sickness. Even in India there are many places like that. So Kshetra Mahatmyam, Kshetra means the place, Mahatmya means the glory. So the glories of the place, without these influence or the glories of the sacred places, each one has a story. But the Guru doesn't have any glory story, Yeah. Guru comes without the influence of sacred places and the glories of the sacred places. Vinapi Kshetra Mahatmyam, Kila means indeed, the glories of the Guru far exceed the glories of the sacred places. Because you can go to the sacred places for what? Little gifts in samsara. You drink the water and you feel healthy for 6 months. And then after that, back to square one. Correct? So, Kshetra Mahatmyam, Vina api, Guru Mahatmyam atah kila. Now what to talk about the glory of the Guru, who liberates without the need for any kind of magic, any kind of sleight of hand, or any kind of influence of places. You don't need a particular place. Vimuktihi yatra kutrapi. Wherever the Guru is, that's where it happens. Or let's say you got the knowledge from the Guru, but the knowledge did not assimilate until you were under the shower, under the shower, because the head is, gets blood cells with the hot water coming. More blood rushes to the head. So, yatra kutrapi, who thought that one would get clarity in the shower? Yeah. But wherever you are, you can get freed without needing to have the ayasa. Ayasa means a particular kind of effort. Without needing to have the effort, you can get liberated. Who knew? But if you want to go to all these places, the sacred places with all their glories, you have to make a lot of effort. And then what? Vina Guruhu, without the Guru, even if you go to the most sacred place called Kashi, Varanasi, there is no freedom. Either the Lord has to become Guru and teach you, or you have to pack the Guru along when you and take the Guru to Kashi in your spare suitcase. Yeah, Guru has to go along with you. Then only you can get mukti in Kashi, you can get moksha in Kashi. Otherwise, Kashi is just a place of again giving little finite dispensation in the place of the infinite. So all these sacred places who have their glories, because this is told, because even now in India people would rather do that than come and sit in a Vedanta class. Yeah, because people are doers. They have identified with doers. So they believe if there is one more horrendous austerity, they tie their own hands. Somebody ties like this, and the legs also, you can imagine, they are tied like this, and then they roll around the parikrama. Parikrama means the outer circle of the shrine. And don't think the shrine is like Mukambika shrine here, Yeah, that is nothing. That is not even one roll. Yeah. These are huge complexes. They are like acres and acres. In fact, don't even think of acres. Think of hectares. Yeah. Think of just huge. It's like bigger than a town, some of them. Like Chidambaram, it's bigger than a town. Meenakshi temple in Madurai. So outside Tirupati, all these Balaji temple, what they do, they get into that, they've tied their hands and legs, and with their stomach muscles, you have to really have a good core for this. With the help of the stomach muscles, without using their hands and legs, they roll around the outside, and then only they enter. One full round they do. Sometimes they do more than one, and then they enter. Correct? Yeah. So difficult it is to get the grace of that particular place. To get that glory, so difficult. But you come to the Guru, and what does the Guru do? Stand not you, but the problem you're having on its head. That's all. Very simple. You don't have to worry about all that. And even after doing all this ayasa effort, what do you get? You become slim and trim. That's all. You don't get moksha. So even if you go to the sacred place, you need the guru to get freedom. That's what this is saying. Because there is that tendency of people to put this over other things. So vinapi, without even kshetra mahatmyam, the glory of certain pilgrim places, guru mahatmyam atah kila. So the guru's glory is all pervasive and is self-standing. Vimuktihi. Why is it self-standing? Yatra kutrapi vimuktihi. For two reasons, the guru's glory is self-standing. Why? Because vimuktihi yatra kutrapi. You don't need a particular place or the time for the freedom to happen. The freedom is anywhere, at any time, no problem at all. Whereas, even if you go to the sacred place called Kashi, without the Guru, there is no freedom. Second reason for the teacher's glory. Very nice. Wonderful. Next one. Kshamyatamiti kim vachyam
Shamyatamiti kim vachyam
prasideti kimucyatam
Prasideti kimucyatam
Kshama prasada sampurnaha
Kshama prasada sampurnaha
Swabhavadeva me guruhu
Swabhavadeva me guruhu
Kshamyatamiti kim vachyam
Shamyatamiti kim vachyam
Prasideti kimucyatam
Prasideti kimucyatam
Kshama prasada sampurnaha
Kshama prasada sampurnaha
Swabhavadeva me guruhu
Swabhavadeva me guruhu.
So one more reason to favor Guru over Bhagavan. Because when you do puja, what do you have to say at the very end? Because yadaksharapada bhrashtam matra hinantu yad bhavet tat sarvam kshamyatam deva prasida parameshwara prasida parameshwari. Or you have that other one, lilting one. What is that? Kayena vacha manasendriyairva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi adyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayami. You have to do that sing song one or the one before that. Meaning, you do the puja, but in the process of the puja, what has happened? The mind has gone somewhere. And then, instead of offering arati, I offered something else. And, I took the naivedya, the food, and did round and round with that. And I took the lamp and went pranaya swaha. And when I burnt my finger, then I said, oh, this is lamp. All wrong things I did. Because there is an order. This is how the invocation has to be done, all these things, but everything is, done. In the middle, I got one phone call. In the middle, I replied to a text. And so, Bhagavan is, going like this. Come on! So, this is Nitya Karma. Nitya Karma means daily, this is the karma. I have to do this. I have to get up in the morning and do this. And in the doing every day new mistakes. Every day same mistakes. All the mistakes are there. And those mistakes, what happens? They rack up, the account of my karma. They come back as bad karma if I don't say this. Please be pleased with my limited resources, with my even more limited attention span, with my limited efforts. Please be forgiving. Please don't rack up my karmic record. And please don't let it come back on me. You have to beg forgiveness. Because you are invoking the all-powerful, and then the all-powerful includes your own karma. So if you make a mistake, that mistake comes back to visit you later. So you don't want that, so you have to just say, Prasida, please be pleased with me. You have to beg Bhagavan. And he says, Kshamyatamiti kim vachyam. What to say this begging? Kim vachyam, what to say? You go to the, I don't have to go to do this to my teacher. Kshamyatam, please forgive me. Why? Because I have been studying Vedanta for so many years. Nothing has gone in. So please forgive me. I never have to say that. Why? Because the Guru is familiar with all this. The Guru knows that it's not your fault that you have not yet learnt. Why? Because you are not in charge of your resistance. You don't know that it is there. You are not in charge of your unconscious. Who put it there? Ishvara. We saw that. So Guru knows, and the Guru is patient, because that is the first, before they let us loose, let all the teachers of Vedanta loose, first thing is you have to be patient. Yeah, that is what the whole thing is. Because if you are impatient with the person for not understanding, that means you are impatient with yourself, really. There is a statement, you spot it, you got it. Yeah. So whatever bothers you about somebody else, because they are not learning fast enough, that means you are upset with yourself, really. Because all there is one, So therefore, the Guru doesn't have to be asked forgiveness. I don't remember. Guru knows very well that you don't remember. I'm not understanding. Guru knows you are not understanding. So the Guru, that's why will explain in different ways. So then you don't have to say, please be pleased with my efforts. Are you happy? How can I make you happy? You don't have to ask that to the Guru, because this is a codependent question. You don't make anyone happy. Yeah. People are happy or they are not. That's all it is. And so therefore the Guru, of course, is always happy, because the Guru's subject matter of what the Guru teaches is all about happiness. So there is no need to say, I have omissions and commissions, because the way the Guru sees you is free of omissions and commissions. So you don't have to say, I have omissions and commissions, because the Guru doesn't see that. Guru sees you as Satchidananda, as all full and free and limitless. Because the Guru sees himself, herself as Satchidananda, the Guru sees the student also as Satchidananda. So until you come and say, the Guru assumes you are learning, until you come and say nothing is going in the head. And even if you say that, it's okay. Because the head is not, what is not going in the head, that is not your essential nature. That is some resistance, fear that has to go. It will go. And the Guru sees you in the best of light, so there are no omissions and commissions. The Guru is not thinking, oh, this one is doing bad things, So if anybody is having that feeling, that is your own feeling. It is not, it is a projection onto the Guru, but it is not what the Guru is thinking. And then what? Then please be pleased. You have to tell Ishvara. Please forgive me, first one, and then please be Prasida, pleased with me. And then please be pleased with me. The Guru is already pleased with you. Kshamyatam iti kim vachyam. Prasida iti kim uchyatam. What to say? Kshama prasada sampurna. The one who is complete with kshama and prasada. With compassion, understanding and forgiveness. The one who is already filled with that. That is my Guru. That's what he's saying. Kshama prasada sampurna swabhavat, by one's own nature, by his own nature, he is my Guru. He is saying that. So this concludes the section called Praise of the Guru. Very beautiful section, isn't it? Yeah. So the next section, very interestingly, is termed Atha Shishya Vivekaha. Atha, now, and also a blessing, because now the Shishya is going to come into the picture. Who is Shishya? Shikshana Yogyaha, student, the one who is desirous of being of being instructed. So Shishya Vivekaha. Shishya Vivekaha is a compound. Shishya Vivekaha means what? Viveka means discrimination. So the temptation is to say Shishyasya Vivekaha, and it won't be wrong because that's the most straightforward meaning. In Sanskrit it is called Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa, a particular, not samosa, a certain kind of a compound called Samasa, where the sixth case compound. Shishyasya, of the student, discrimination. So the discrimination of the student. But really speaking, when you read through it, it is not and nothing to do with the student at all. It may as well have been entitled Praise of the Guru Part 2. That was Part 1. This is Part 2. So then why is it titled, this is very interesting, why is it titled Discrimination of the Student when it has nothing to do with the student at all? Because that's how the knowledge is. The knowledge is all about the teaching and all about the teacher. Really speaking, there is no such thing called student. Yeah. Why do I say that? Because the one who identifies as student, what is the essential nature of that one? Whole and infinite, limitless, Satchidananda. What is the essential nature of the teacher? Satchidananda. But then, some identity I have to have right now. So I identify as a student. Okay, very good. I take my Vedanta school bag and then I come to the school. I wear my Vedanta uniform, white color, and then I come to the school and sit down, correct? Waiting to be instructed. Because now I have identified as what? Shishya. Then what? The Guru tells these are the qualities of being a Shishya. You have to have Shama. What is Shama? A mind that is resolved and not always crowded by fears and tears. The capacity to be open, forgiving, all this. Then Dhamma, the restraint with regard to speech and organs of action. Just because I feel like cuffing someone, I don't go do that. Inwardly I may cuff, but outwardly, the hands are just in great repose. So then, that is Dhamma. I have to have Vairagya, discrimination of what is permanent, what is impermanent. Vairagya, dispassion, letting go of following the impermanent all the time. All these things I have to have. And then, I slowly earn them. Correct? I earn these qualifications in order to be called a qualified student of knowledge. And boy, is it hard work. It's a lot of hard work because there are big boulders in the way. There are big landslides on the way. And I keep slipping and sliding on this, what is that? On this hill of qualifications, which is always uphill. And then what? Finally, I get it. I feel like, okay, not bad. Shama has improved. Why? Because the people at home said a few things and I did not retort back. Wonderful. Dhamma has also improved. And guess what? I am gaining the knowledge. I am getting it. Yes, this is wonderful. Aha moment now. Aha moment now. I got it. And like that fellow who first sat in the bathtub and then roamed around Greece, saying, I have found it, I have discovered it. Archimedes. Yeah. So this is what the Shishya feels like doing. Going to town, literally, with the knowledge, and then what? Belting it out and saying, east or west, I am the best. So the discrimination of the student is erroneously entitled, if you take it the straightforward way, the discrimination of the student lies in knowing that everything is just the teacher. And this keeps the ego in check. So the first time when Narahari discusses the student, he takes a pin. The next few verses are making the pin go into the ego, the ahankara of the student, and you hear a hissing sound of all that hot air coming out. The student is flattened by the weight of the guru. Guru means heavy. Under the weightage of the prominence of the teacher, what student? You think you gained the knowledge? You think you know everything? Forget it. And when you forget it, then you are a discriminate student. So that is why it is called discrimination of the student, in knowing how little the student really matters and how all the work is done by the guru. A very elegant and very important and a beautiful set of verses. It's just so fantastic. Let us look at it. Let us look at the first one. Atha Shishya Vivekaha.
Atha Shishya Vivekaha.
Atha is a sound of blessing. So in saying Atha, he is blessing the students who are to come and who are going to be studying this. You know, he is blessing the students to have this discrimination that it is all the teacher alone. Okay? Yeah. Atha Shishya Vivekaha.
Atha Shishya Vivekaha.
Okay, there is a spelling mistake. It should be long U, the second word, Guru Padeshaha, not Guru Padeshaha. Bijam Guru Padesho hi.
Bijam Guru Padesho hi.
Jignasuhu kshetramuchyate.
Jignasu Kshetramuchyate.
When the visarga is followed by the letter ksha, which is a conjunct compound, then the visarga is articulated fully. It does not blend in. Okay? Bijam Guru Padesho hi.
Bijam Guru Padesho hi.
Jignasuhu kshetramuchyate.
Jignasu Kshetramuchyate.
Vivekankurajo bodha. No, Vivekankurajo bodha.
Vivekankurajo bodha.
Drumo mokshastu tatphalam.
Dhrumo mokshastu tatphalam.
He begins with a flourish, a fantastic flourish. For him, there is no building up to something. And these set of verses again have a double entendre, which is very difficult to miss, but which is, if we miss, we are losing everything. So that's why he begins with a beautiful flourish, gets straight to the point. And why do I say he begins with a flourish? Because he turns a cliched, what is that? Vedantic metaphor on its head. And what is this? Starting with the Bhagavad Gita. Urdhva moolam shakham ashwatham prahuravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam veda sa vedavit adhaschordhvam prasritastasya shakhaha gunapravriddha vishayaprabalaha adhascha moolanyanusantatani karmanubandhini manushya-loke. Like this, the 15th chapter also starts with a flourish. And after that, everybody, almost all the people writing, Vedantic poetry or Vedantic verses in using these poetic meters, have compared a tree to samsara. The tree propagates, Like even a banyan tree propagates, it has adventitious roots which then make the tree again becomes the seed and again becomes the tree. It keeps propagating like the family tree, the genealogy tree, the samsara tree. This is oft used and a favorite metaphor of all Vedanta poets, including Viveka Chudamani. Bijam samsriti bhumi jasya tu tamaha देहात्मधीरङ्कुरः रागः पल्लवमम्बु कर्मतु वपुः स्कन्धोत्सवः शाखिकाः अग्रणीन्द्रियसंहतिश्च विषयाः दुःखानि पुष्पं फलं नानाकर्मसमुद्भवं बहुविधं भोक्ता जीवत्र खगः. Viveka Chudamani, same thing, it reiterates what is taught by the Bhagavad Gita, this upside down tree, where the roots are above, the branches are below, so to speak. The roots are what? Bhagavan, it's beyond objectification, it's you. And the branches are, here again he talks about this, bija, the seed for this samsara tree. Bijam samsriti bhumi jasya tu tamaha is ignorance. The seed of this tree is ignorance. Dehatma buddhi. What is Dehatma buddhi? Considering myself as good as the body. Considering the self as good as the body. I am not beyond this body mind sense complex. This thinking is the sprout, Ankuraha. Ragaha pallavaha. The leaves of the tree are all the raga dveshas. Karma ambu, you water this tree through actions and the tree grows. Samsara grows through actions. Skandaha vapu, the trunk of the tree is the trunk of this tree. Here, the body tree. Skandaha, vapuhu. Asavaha shakhika, the smaller branches are like the 5 pranas. Agrani, the twigs, are the 5 sense organs. Vishayaha pushpani, the sense objects are the lovely flowers on the tree, saying pick me, eat me, smell me, come to me. And the tree fruitions into what? Fruit is sorrow. Nana karma samudbhavam, this tree brought on by all my karmas. Bahuvidham. And who am I? Who is this jiva? The jiva is the miserable bird sitting on this tree, eating the sad fruits and miserable fruits and also not being able to get away from it also. Very picturesque, very beautiful. Same with Bhagavad Gita says that. Urdhva mulaha adhash shakha. This Ashwatha, this banyan tree. Sanatanaha. This Ashwatha, this samsara tree is eternal, so to speak. Eternal what? Until this ignorance is gone. Asanga shastrena dridena chitva. You have to fell the tree with the axe of dispassion. This is how, these are all very, violent metaphors and very grand. And so, when you think of tree, in the Vedanta thing, in the Vedantic lingo, you don't look upon it as something wonderful because it propagates itself. Yeah. Now that's going to change because he looks at the tree in a very different way. He says that the seed of the tree is the knowledge, the seed mantra or the knowledge given by the Guru. And what is the student? The student is the earth where the knowledge is placed.
Oh, beautiful.
So different. So let us look at that. Bijam Guru Upadeshaha. Very easy. Guru Upadeshaha, the teaching of the Guru is the seed. Okay, wonderful. Then what? He, indeed, Jignyasuhu, the desirous student, the student who is really desirous of learning, Kshetram Uchyate, is the earth, the place where the seed is sown. The discrimination of the student is Ankurajaha. So the tree has to have a sprout, correct? The seed does not immediately grow into a tree, does it? What comes in between? Sprout. So that sprout is the nascent discernment of what is real and what is mithya. That nascent discrimination is the sprout. Then what? Then bodhadrumaha. The tree itself is the teaching. When it grows into a strong, wonderful, leafy tree, that's the teaching proclaiming itself. And of course, the tree has the fruits, right? What is the fruit? Moksha. Liberation from samsara is the fruit. Look at this, he's done it very deliberately. Because this oft used metaphor, we are always used to seeing the tree of samsara. Starting with Kathopanishad, then Bhagavad Gita, then Viveka Chudamani. Right away we have 3 examples, and if we look further, we'll have more. So therefore what? Therefore this needs a certain, this needs to, why does he do this? So that we wake up. Otherwise one more samsara tree equation, I know this. You know what, I'll check out and think about what I'm going to have for lunch, and when they finish talking about this verse, I'll come back. This is the tendency. There are some people in India, it must be a culturalism. They don't let you talk. As soon as you say something, I know. You are just trying to say something, and I have seen poor Pujya Swamiji along with some of these people. Swamiji will say, that something has to be done. I know. Swamiji hasn't even talked. And then again he starts. Again, I know Swamiji, I know everything. I know. What do you know? And what they know is not at all what you think they should know. Yeah. So this is a habit. And this habit, even if it is in India, it is proclaimed loudly, I know. But in other countries, perhaps in the West, it is still there, but it is not proclaimed. So as soon as samsara is equal to tree, and bird, dva suparna, that's another one. Dva suparna sayuja sakhayaha samane vrikshe parishashva jate. One more I have given you a example of the abiding influence of seeing the tree as samsara. Where in the Mundaka Upanishad, 2 birds sitting on the tree, one of them is very restless for what? Berries, eating the sour berries and spitting it out and cursing Ishvara, and the other bird is what? Just shining on. Yeah. So this is all talked about, samsara, duality, tree. Somehow everyone loves that, because the Upanishads love that, and everybody just reiterates the Upanishad. And so as soon as you hear one more example of samsara and tree, you as the student have had it. You just say, I'm going to my happy place and I'll come back later. And this changes it all. Here you say, oh, wait, what was what? Oh, what was the kshetra? Kshetra is me? Am I jigyasu? Yes, I am. Okay, so I am the kshetra, I am the earth, and the teacher's teaching is the seed. And the teaching is placed in a fertile ground, which is me, which is my jignasa. Which is me means my jignasa, my desire to learn becomes the fertile ground for the teacher to place the teaching, and then I sprout, the knowledge sprouts in the form of the discrimination. Alpha, the knowledge sprouts in the form of this nascent discrimination. Oh my God, what have I missed? Oh my God, where was I all my life? And oh my God, I have missed myself. What? Oh my God, oh me God. This knowledge is the sprout, and then this clarity grows stronger and stronger. But the sprout in the beginning, is very culpable to the strong winds of samsara, the winds of distraction. The sprout covers, and then the sprout, but the winds are still hovering, and then the sprout sometimes dies. But here, no, this sprout is a successful sprout. It's made of strong genes of what? strong genes of jignasa. Desire to learn is so strong that the sprout does not succumb to the strong winds of distraction. Family pressure, somebody saying something, or whatever, being upset with the teacher, all the sprout survives. And then what? It grows, clarity grows, and then into a tree which is unfellable. That's the idea, he's hinting that. Then what? The clarity becomes the tree. It's the tree of clarity. What is that? Bodha drumaha. Bodha here means knowledge, assimilated knowledge. The clarity here becomes the tree. And then what? The tree fruitions into moksha, freedom from self-inadequacy. So here is a strong person standing like a tree. And then what? Without any self-inadequacy. That tree gives, we can extrapolate now, gives shelter to other, people who may not be interested in the teaching but who want shelter, who want refuge. The tree gives. But who want the fruit of moksha, they can pick and eat. That tree becomes the teacher tree for other jignasus. And that tree sheds its seed and then creates a lineage right underneath it. And if I look deeply into why he did this metaphor change, switched the metaphor, I can't but think about the context in which this was being written. Soon after the British influence in India was starting to be felt. Soon after they came, like they are coming now after the Nepal earthquake with their Bibles along with the food packets. They are seeing it as, what is that? Harvesting the souls. Yeah, this is very bad. So that also they were doing in the beginning. And then what? There in the Bible, what does it say? Why were Adam and Eve punished? Tree of what? They ate the fruit of knowledge and they were banished. Here you eat the fruit of knowledge and you are liberated. There also, if you want, a Vedantic look, you can extrapolate. Even in the Bible, you can say that the knowledge is really not a fruit. It's not karma phala. But because Adam and Eve treated knowledge like karma phala, they could not continue to, be in that oneness. You can say that. But really speaking, I see a little bit of this. You can extrapolate here and see that, his change of this metaphor into seeing the tree as not a harmful thing at all. No snakes, no banishment, just something to abide in your own glory whose fruits are safe to eat. I wonder if it had something to do with the context of his times. Very beautiful. So moksha tat phalam. So the moksha is the fruit of jignasa, is the fruit of vairagya, is the fruit of the desire to learn, is the fruit of dispassion, is the fruit of, freedom, which is because of the dispassion, because of the desire to learn, because of the discrimination, you get entitled to this fruit. But it is not a fruit of action. So, very nice. And then I said the whole section has a double meaning. Where else have we seen the word kshetra? Dharma kshetre, kurukshetre, and 13th chapter kshetra and kshetragya. Knower of the field, so to speak, and the field itself. Correct? Very good. So then, what is the kshetra here in that, idam shariram kshetramiti abhidhiyate. And then kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi. I am the kshetra, I am the kshetragya. Correct? Yeah. So here also, the difference between Shishya and Guru, one who is placing the seed of knowledge and the other one who is receiving the seed of knowledge, it's all Bhagavan. It's all Bhagavan. It's an as though duality. You see this as though duality. And in this as though duality, one is the material and the other one is the creator of that material. Now we see and appreciate the double entendre totally, because he uses the metaphor of the Vedantic vision of Bhagavan being Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. Yeah, what is Ishvara? The material cause and the all knowledge, the intelligent cause and the material cause. Because where will you get the material from? The material is also Bhagavan. You can't, if you want to make bread, you can go and buy, beg the flour and sugar and buy something and make it. But where is the one who is everything going to go? The only one, where is he, she going to go? Nowhere. So therefore, that material is non-separate from the maker. So in this, in this Shishya's discrimination, in this section called the discrimination of the student, the vision of Ishvara is being given simultaneously. That is the greatness of this section. It's just so fantastic, And the vision of Ishvara is being given through a very oft used metaphor in the Vedantic parlance, which is that of the field and the knower of the field. In the beginning, we say they are two different things. The field is Maya, correct? The field is a projection of Bhagavan. And the field is the material through which everything is made. And the knower of the field manipulates the material, so to speak, and directs the material knowledgeably and intelligently in order to have this flawless universe. Totally infallible universe. The universe shares the DNA of Bhagavan, that which is infallible is Bhagavan, and anything that Bhagavan manifests is indeed also infallible. So then this material cannot have in this what is that called? In this model of the manifestation, the material cannot go rogue. If the material goes rogue, what do we have? We have disorder, we don't have order. Even when the material goes rogue, like let's say it develops a tumor in the body somewhere where it should not be, that disorder is also part of the larger order of karma. Very interesting. So the material cannot go rogue, and the material's grace is in being directed ably by the one who is directing the material. Ultimately, the material is non-separate from the maker. In order to account for this diverse duality and the manifest universe, we have to say material maker. Otherwise, it's all maker. The material is also the maker. The maker is not the material. That's what it is. Because the material is a projection, name and form. So here, the guru is Bhagavan, Ishvara, and the student is the material. Directed by the teacher to have a purpose, to have a place, to fulfill a purpose. Directed by the teacher who is all knowledge to fulfill a specific purpose. Think about how deep this is. So just like Maya, the power of Ishvara, all knowledge, all power, the material cause of the universe, we say, is Maya. That Maya, that power to create, and that material which changes, which takes on the form and the name of various objects, that material is directed. It's not some kind of a material gone completely awry and is creating havoc. It's a material that is guided ably and infallibly by the Maker to, see it through its name, its form, its purpose. So you take anything in the universe, even if you take, what to talk of something so beautiful like a flower. I mean, this has bloomed perfectly. Look at that, so lovely, very nice, and has a nice fragrance also. So what is the purpose of this? The purpose, this has now become a teaching flower. It did not know that that was its purpose. If it had a human mind, it would be saying, I was harvested before my time, I should have been outside enjoying the fresh air, and then here somebody cut and put me in this water. Many more, since today was a weekend, many more people taking a walk would have loved me. And here I just came in this, dingy room, and I am sitting in this room. If it had a human mind, it would think that. Then suddenly, it was lifted out of the water, and it was little shocked. Okay, I was enjoying my drink. What happened? But then I am being called a teaching flower. Oh, not just teaching ABC, Vedanta teaching flower. Yeah. This is who I am. This is my real purpose. Oh my God, I am a teacher's aide. So the whole time I was flowering perfectly. It was not to become a model. It was to be a teaching aid. A different kind of a model. Bhagavan has a sense of humor. So I was not to be a model of perfection, but I was to model that perfection which I already am. That purpose which is already my purpose. Oh, Abba, it took so long to find my purpose. Better late than never, okay? Yeah. So like this, one doesn't know. One doesn't know. I'm going to take few more minutes if that's okay. So, that was not quite a choice, was it? So one doesn't know the purpose, but the purpose is there. I conclude with a story, and we'll pick this up again later because there's a lot more to say about it. There was a pot, not this kind of a pot. This is our teaching pot, yeah. Because today it has been displaced by the teaching flower, so I had to make it feel okay and bring it back. So not this pot, a regular big water pot. And it had been the target of a naughty boy in the village, and who had, what is that? Catapult? Yeah. What did you call it?
Slingshot.
Slingshot?
Yes. Yeah, American.
American, yeah. This catapult. So, one naughty fellow has hit it, and it developed a little hole. And then the water carrier, in whose house these two pots lived, one was perfectly round, no holes. The other one was having this little crack by this catapult. And he used to take it on a big, what is that called? Pole. On either side, the ropes would hold the pots. And his job was to fill the pots up, trek up the hill where there was a small temple, and leave the pots for Abhisheka for the priests. And while he was going up, unbeknownst to him, the pots are having the conversation. The perfect pot is taunting the non-perfect pot. Oh, you full of holes. You're not doing your job by even carrying the Abhisheka water, because by the time you have gone up the hill, half of you has, gone. Half of the water has gone. You are nothing but a fake pot. You are a leaky pot. You are a crack pot. You are an awful pot. And this pot was feeling so bad, feeling awful. And one day it prayed. It said, "Oh Shiva, I'm not doing your service properly, because all the water, half of the water is leaking when I go up. I feel so bad." And in the dream, Lord Shiva came out of the Shivalinga and said, "Let's go for a walk, you and I, oh dear pot." and took it up the hill and said, which side do you come on? This side, right side. Look at this, what has happened on the right side. On the right side, the continuous watering had made all the wildflowers grow. The delight of every traveler to the temple. And people started to come more and more because all these flowers were growing. And then not only that, then the priest started to pick the flower and make a nice garland and offer it to the Lord. See how much you are serving, and the pot was very happy. And the moral of the story is just that everything in this universe, what to talk of you, the conscious being, everything has a purpose. And even the so-called defects are purposefully there. The defects are a blessing. And until we discover the blessing, we cannot really call it a defect. And after we discover the blessing, of course we cannot call it a defect. Because it's all perfect. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So the next class will meet when? On the 17th. And I want to take a little poll because in June we'll be missing all the classes. I'm not here in June. And so if you would like, we can have one more class the following Sunday, which is the 24th. How many of you will come if we have the class on the 24th? You won't come? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah,
Oh, no, I probably will.
you won't come. And you both are not here?
Oh no, it looks like I'm here.
You are here. Okay. Phyllis, you are coming? Yeah. Okay. So then we'll have one more class. See, we'll have 17th and then the very next week. So next week, holiday, we'll have only our Mundaka. And then the following week, 17th is a scheduled class. And then 24th, one more class we'll have. Because in June, we can't have this at all. Any questions at this point? Yeah.
Yes, about this desire, how does it happen? Say you have two people, same, right? Same, so karma, same karma, and where does this desire come from? Why does this person? Is it because of?
You can't have the same karma, first of all. Karmas will be slightly different. Even twins will have different karma. Yeah. So therefore, the desire comes, from where means from previous lives. Basically, some samskaras are there for the desire. So the desire comes. Desire is not bad. Desire is fine. It's just that when it becomes binding, that is the problem. The binding desire means that I become a slave to this desire. That's, when the problem is. But if there is a desire you want to fulfill and you have the means to fulfill it, and the means are not cutting through somebody else's rights and trampling on other people's, rights and privileges, then it's okay. You fulfill the desire in a dharmic way. Nothing wrong. But if the desire becomes an obsession, then it doesn't free the mind for anything else. That is what we have to be mindful of.
And then specifically for desire for knowledge.
Yeah, the desire for knowledge also comes from previous good karma. Yeah, that is why you have it. Yeah. Any other question? Can we just keep going? Yeah, that's why we are having an extra class. That's why we are having an extra class. It's truly beautiful. We have not met a text like this. It is so lovely. It is just wonderful. We haven't met something that is so versatile and these, double entendres. It's just fantastic. Very, very nice. So we'll keep going on the 17th and then on the 24th. And we'll pick it up in July. Om Namah Shivaya.